Great. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Design Justice Network session. I think this is about the fourth time or fifth time we're doing this session. And just so that you all know, we have been recording them and then changing them and updating them as things change within the network. If you want to follow along the slides, you can also keep them for your own reference. I'm pasting a quick note in the chat with a link, but the link is also there on your screen. You can use these slides for reference in the future if you need them. And it's so great that everybody's introducing themselves. So I'm going to jump start in so that my speaking part can be faster and we can get to questions and answers. So before I start, I didn't introduce myself, I think. So my name's Victoria Barnett. I use she and her pronouns. I am the International Network Coordinator for the Design Justice Network. So I work part-time as a contract staff. And then I also work as a freelance graphic and web designer, and I'm based in Toronto, Ontario. I'm part of the Toronto node. And Toronto, the territories are the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Mississauga, and the Huron-Wendat. And our other staff is Taylor Simone. She's not here with us today, but you'll meet her probably in future either sessions or other things that you might become involved in with the network. So to start off, why are we holding these sessions? A big part of that is to provide a lot better support for our new members and new signatories. There weren't always entry points into the network. It was a little bit complicated. So we're learning and we're growing and we're trying to improve the experience for everybody. And we've been learning a lot from sessions like this where people join and we learn more about what people need. Oops. And we've also learned from our nodes and working groups, just that there's more support needed for folks that are just starting off learning about the network. So these sessions serve as kind of an entry point for you to join and hopefully find space in the rest of the network. And part of this is that I start introducing parts of the network. But before I start introducing the network, I'll just do a very brief, what is design justice, a little bit of that background and history, just because if folks are really new, it's a good quick overview to go through. If I didn't mention that we have closed captions on, you can enable them. I think I put it in the chat, so just making sure. So what is design justice? It's a framework for analysis of how design, and design could be many things. So images or graphic design or web design, the built environment around us, socio-technical systems like Zoom that we're using today, or Twitter and social media. So how those design objects or interfaces influence the distribution of benefits and burdens between various groups of people. And I will explain that now. Oops. But before I explain that, it's important to also just recognize the philosophies and the organizations and the people who inspired the Design Justice Network and Design Justice. I won't go fully in depth with these organizations, but they're really amazing. So the slides that you can see on the screen are all clickable. So you can click to learn more about the Allied Media Conference or Allied Media Projects, which is AMP. They are our fiscal sponsor for Design Justice Network. So they take care of all of our finances. The Digital Justice Coalition inspired a lot of the work in the beginning of the Design Justice Network. And Black feminist thought, disability justice movements, and some of these other amazing organizations are the basis of the Design Justice Network and the Design Justice Principles. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see resource intro to the Design Justice Network book. And that's actually a really good chapter if you want to read. That will give a bit more in-depth background and history on what I will talk about. So now, what is design justice? So on the screen, what you'll see is a black circle, and inside of it is written design process. And then there are 3 pinkish colored dots on the inside of that circle. And on the outside of that circle, you see about 8 greenish colored dots. And so the inside dots represent people who are part of a design process, and the outside dots are those that are outside of that design process. And so when we're talking about a typical design process, most of the time, processes center those who are already powerful, and the others are on the periphery, so on the outside of that process. So the pink dots here center those with power, and the green dots center those who are on the periphery or outside of that process. And so I start normally with explaining a typical design process, just so that design justice will make more sense when we get to it. There we go. And so when we're talking about design justice, we're talking about who was involved in the process, who was harmed, and who benefited. And you'll see a Venn diagram here that we've used for previous workshops to help explain the concepts of design justice, but this also was involved in the very first process of developing the design justice principles. And so fundamentally, design justice is about the distribution of the benefits and the harms, as well as the procedural justice of the overall design. And so in the conventional design process, like I discussed, those benefits tend to go to those with more power, and less benefits goes to those who have less power, typically speaking. And then vice versa, that the harms tend to go to those who are less powerful, and less harms go to those who are more powerful. If I were to just give a super quick example, if we use just, Apple or Samsung as an example, and I don't know, the new Apple phone, for example, the production of the Apple phone tends to have people with most power, so like a CEO or a UX designer inside of the company, for example, having more power. And then those who have less power are folks who are like building the products or mining for the batteries in that process. And so when we're talking about a typical design process, these are the harms and the benefits. And so when we're talking about design justice, we're talking about a process that expands the knowledge and lived experience of the community. And so as you can see, the green dots are now at the center of that process, and the pink dots are still inside the process, but they're more on the periphery. So everybody is involved, but those who are part of the community, or the people who the thing is being built for or created for, are centered and part of the decision-making process. And so then now moving into what the Design Justice Network is just a growing community of practice, as well as lots of people all over the world, which focuses on this equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens, on the meaningful participation in design decisions, and the recognition of community-based, Indigenous, and diasporic design traditions, knowledge, and practices. So things that have already been working for many, many years are at that center and are recognized as important in the design process. And so now I'll go into a little bit about the network. The picture that you see on the screen here is actually from the first session of Design Justice Network. It took place at the Allied Media Conference, which is an annual conference in Detroit, Michigan, in the summer of 2015. And in this picture, you can see, well, you can't see 30 people, but there's about 30 people, different designers, so artists, people in technology, people who are architects, lots of different backgrounds. And they took part in this workshop called Generating Shared Principles for Design Justice. And this is the workshop. I'm not sure if you can see on the table in front of them, but we actually used that Venn diagram to talk about some projects happening in Detroit at the time. And the goal of the workshop was to move beyond the frames of social impact design and design for good, which are very much used in the world these days, a lot of the times by big companies and corporations, to say that, we're doing good, just work. But But that's why design justice was born, because a lot of folks doing the work in a justice-centered way didn't feel like design for good fit for them. And so it's challenging those notions of designers to think about how these good intentions are not necessarily enough to ensure that a design process and or practice becomes a tool for liberation. And the workshop developed the initial set of design justice principles. And the goal of developing those was to help practitioners and people in the design worlds and spheres to avoid that reproduction of existing inequalities. And as I've already mentioned, there are many overlapping communities of practice that do this work in some of those organizations in the past that I mentioned. So besides the Design Justice Network, there's the Decolonizing Design Group, Data Feminists, Afrofuturist Speculative Design, Design for the Pluriverse, so many more that are either centered around or part of the Design Justice Network and that we've been inspired by. And so at that workshop where you just saw the image of the people at the table, here is some of the brainstorming of the principles. So people were asked to answer this prompt: design justice is. And so on the left-hand side, you see design justice is designing with instead of designing for. And then the second prompt was we do this by, and there were lots of different ideas of how we do this. So throwing giant dance parties, learning and teaching studios. And this ultimately led to the principles, which were then edited and reframed and changed around a lot. And this image that you see in front of you was from the 2016, so 1 year later, Allied Media Conference, where design justice folks that you can see there met again and took the principles as they were from the previous year, and then edited and revised them. So changed the words or discussed what each word meant and how we could change and make it better, more adaptable. And so then the following year, this is 2017, this is us back at the Allied Media Conference, and this is where the 10 design justice principles were officially launched, the 10 that you see on the website today and the 10 that have been translated into many different languages. And just as a note, we, the Design Justice Network and the steering committee, believe that those principles should change as is needed, or maybe more need to be added. So just in terms of feedback or ideas, that those are always welcome. And what you see on the screen here is some of the zines that the network has created over the years. There's actually a working group working on a new zine right now, but they're freely available at designjustice.org on the zines page. And now I'm going to quickly jump into the structure of the network, how it exists right now. There's a link there if you want to go and read some more. But on the right-hand side, you see the black circle, and you've got the white dotted line. So on the outside of the white dotted line, you see the word signatories. On the inside, you see members. Signatories are folks that have read and signed on to the design justice principles and said that they want to use it in their work, in their lives, which is amazing. I think we have more than 2,000 people who've signed on to these now. And the members are people who've just taken a next step and joined the network, either with a paid membership or a volunteering role within the network. And then folks on the inside, you have working groups, the steering committee, and local nodes. So those are all the ways that people participate in the network. And I will go into a bit further depth on local nodes and working groups. The steering committee is just the sort of administrative body that makes decisions for the network. And they're folks who've been involved and part of the network for a really long time, or have volunteered a lot of time with the network. And so a question that we get asked a lot is, how do I join the Design Justice Network? And there are basically 2 steps. You can read and sign on to the principles. And I'm sure a lot of you have already done that, but if you haven't and you want to check them out, the link is there. And then the next step, if you want, you can either start volunteering or do a paid Design Justice Network membership. And membership, when you join as a member, you get a few benefits. So we have a Design Justice members Slack channel where members from all over the world are in touch, as well as our local nodes and working groups. You get to be a part of member story sharing sessions. So an individual member will talk about their work, share stories, share difficulties, and have time for question and answer. And as well, you get a special invite to the Design Justice Network Care Circle, which I will go into now. And there are many other benefits. It could be a really long conversation. And so the Care Circle is something that the network started this year, because what we were noticing is lots of people are burning out. And this is pretty consistent across the board for any kind of movement based or movement building. And so we thought, and one of our steering committee members, Denise Shante, has really spearheaded this with a team of Design Justice members that have been putting on some really amazing care circles. But it's a virtual series of practices for Design Justice folks, members, and we have one per season. So we've had summer, oh, I forgot the seasons, winter, summer, fall, spring, there we go. So yes, we've had, I think 3 sessions this year, and I think we'll probably be looking at one for January or February. So if that interests you, you can find out more at the link there at the bottom. One important question that we are also always asked is, how do you connect with these other amazing organizations that exist out there in the world? And this is only a short list here: Black Women Flourish, Design as Protest, American Institute of Architects, Digital Justice Lab. There are so many amazing groups doing very similar or aligned type of work, and we're all doing it in our own ways, but are connected behind the thoughts of design justice. So we're connected just mostly over the internet or via personal relationships, but we all kind of support or highlight each other's work. And so another question that's often asked is about how does design justice get or manage finances? In terms of finances, there are 4 main sources: membership fees. So people who join the network as a member can pay, a one-time fee, or can pay a yearly fee or a monthly fee. It's up to the individual or organization to determine that amount. We also have merchandise and publications. So those zines that I showed you, and we've had t-shirts and stickers and various things. If creating things like that is exciting to you, we haven't created any new merchandise for some time. So that's definitely something that there's volunteer opportunities to do. Workshops and talks. So sometimes, predominantly the steering committee will be asked to lead or facilitate a workshop. Sometimes we are also asked to facilitate a process for an organization, for example. And so that's where some income comes from. And then also there's folks that just give, a one-time individual donation. So every little bit is amazing. And that's just how this network has really been growing. What's next? And who are our members? So this is definitely a question that is asked all the time, and is also something that the steering committee really wants to pay attention to and figure out in the next year. But for the time in existence, members and paid membership was never the goal or the idea behind the network, but we kind of realized that there's a lot of movement behind what folks are doing and excitement around it. So how can we both support that excitement as well as create a space that folks can connect with each other? And so paid membership since the beginning has just helped grow the capacity of the network. And part of that is, for example, myself working as a contract staff. It started where I was doing lots of administrative things and trying to answer all the emails in a day. And the network was just growing so large that it was becoming impossible to do that on top of other things. So the network or the membership fees have really supported that type of growth to expand the outreach of the network. But part of our network-wide problems is we're still learning about the network. We're still learning about the membership, and we're still learning who is part of this network. And one of the goals is to build a membership database where people could see and interact with each other from all over the world, and also know where folks are coming from and know what time zone everybody is in. I've got lots of time zones up here in my brain now because of meeting some of the amazing folks here, both in the room as well as in the network. And so becoming a member through the paid support helps ensure that members are in community with each other, so that it's kind of a safer space for folks to connect, that folks are in alignment with the design justice principles, and that we have that space of care and safety. The link at the bottom here is a 2020 membership report, so you could take a look if you haven't seen it. It just goes into some in-depth information about what happened during 2020. And for design justice members, you could see some of the finances for the network. And so overall, we're building capacity to figure out that membership database. It's been hyper internet facilitated, especially because the network is international, but we're learning more and more. And in the membership report, there are some member spotlights, but I'm also going to show you some now. And so here's some design justice in action. So I've actually recorded these member story sessions. So as a member, you can participate and join them. But as someone who's not a member, you can watch all of the videos online. And some of our members are doing such awesome things, and it would be too long to go into each story. But we've got the videos online, and we're probably going to be having another session in January. But our first member story was this woman, Leila Sidi, and she is a woodworker and a luthier, and she builds electric guitars with an environmental justice focus. So when I spoke with her and when we had that session, she talked a lot about how, guitars are made for the typical male, larger portions of body frame. And her focus is to build a guitar for the person who's going to actually play the guitar, to make it work for that person, to make it usable. And so part of her practice is also an environmental justice lens, and she sources her wood from the local neighboring community of where she lives. And Leslie and Noel, plus many other people in the network, if you are part of our newsletter, we've been trying to feature a new member spotlight each month. Our newsletter will probably come out today for this month, and you'll see a new story about one of our members, Mike Harrington, who is part of the communications working group. So another way to get involved, or another design justice in action, is our working groups. Currently, there are two that are quite active. One is the Design Justice Principles at Work. They are doing many amazing things. It says that Lindsay Miller will say a bit, but Lindsay is not here with us today, so I will just tell you about it. So Principles at Work has been around for about 1.5 years, maybe a bit more, but they've really, really flourished in the network. Their main focus, if you were to try to just describe what they do, it's actually what a lot of people in the network come in and are interested with. But they're trying to share stories and strategies to help designers apply the design justice principles in their workplaces, whatever your workplace is. That's what they have been doing, and they've been doing amazing. They've been putting on workshops. They are currently working on a zine. So if anyone's interested in zines, they've put a call out for submissions. Take a look at the website here, because it goes into detail more what they're looking for. And then they've got a workshop group, an assessment group, and they've really, really come together. It's people from all over parts of the network. And the other working group is the communications working group. And that's just still starting up. But if social media or podcasting or helping create a monthly newsletter or working on the website, any sort of communications type support, if that's exciting to you and you're looking to get involved in the network, there's definitely lots of space for people to get involved. Currently, the group is working on improving the newsletter, getting feedback from members and folks that are following the network on that newsletter, because it used to be really, really long, and we're trying to shorten it and turn it digital. And any support around social media or accessibility of a lot of our tools and communications. There's lots of space. And you can be part of local nodes and working groups at the same time, or you can be part of as many of the things that you'd like to be part of. And then these are just a couple of the other potential volunteering opportunities. I think I've mentioned a few throughout the meeting, but a lot of people have been volunteering to do translations of the design justice principles. Some folks have been writing for the network, so it could be joining an event like the one we're in now and writing an event report back, or creating social content based on an event or something that happened. And sometimes when we have sessions, we ask if there's anyone available to take notes, because it's hard to facilitate and take notes at the same time. And I think I threw out some more other ideas, but basically there's tons of opportunities. And if something that I've mentioned speaks to you and you're ready to get involved, you can get in touch via email. And that will come in a second. I'm almost done the speaking parts. And so important other notes to think about in terms of the network are that the network has really had a lot of impact. So I mentioned it started not yet as Design Justice Network, but the roots of building the principles was 2015, and we're now in 2021. And over all of those years, there's been design education, and more so the re-education, so changing how that education happens in the design institutes that we're a part of. There have been tons of local workshops and local nodes forming, lots of different projects and working groups like we've discussed. There have been different organizations who've supported and signed on to the principles, as well as lots of content creation, whether it's translations, zines, papers and articles that are written where the network is mentioned, and as well the membership growth. So I didn't mention this, but I think we're over 500 members now. Maybe it's even more, but it's just been growing and growing in the last few years, which has been so awesome to see. But that doesn't mean that there isn't still tons of room for growth. And one of those things, as I mentioned, was creating that membership database for people to connect more easily. But we're also mostly volunteer run. People are distributed geographically, so internationally, so time zones, and putting on events like this, we always want to balance when we host them so that we can have enough involvement from people. We've also had new and evolving structures and decision-making process. So as the network has grown, it's still so young. We've been learning and trying to evolve and change those things. There's always difficulties or challenges, I guess, and room for growth around organizing and activating the principles. And that's why, if you're really interested in that, especially in a workplace, the Principles at Work team is an awesome place to get started. And as I mentioned, understanding who's in the network and understanding the best scale for this network. And the last point is the need for a vision and mission, which is something that the steering committee has spent the last year and a half developing. And in a few more days, it's actually going to be launched out into the world through the network, and members have been invited to join for a celebration. It'll be recorded and posted on YouTube as well. And so I'm just taking a look at how much I have left here because I don't want to keep you too long. The visioning, this is what I was just describing, that we were needing this vision and mission. And as I mentioned, it's almost ready to be launched, and it'll be really exciting if any of you will be joining the celebration or watching it later. You will definitely get some emails or social media posts about it. But it's really exciting. And through that process, part of the work was just figuring out what is a mission, what is a vision. And another part of that process was figuring out we actually needed some intentions. So the steering committee has set some intentions for the network or for their roles within the network. And so last but not least, here are the links for becoming a signatory or becoming a member if you're interested, or if you needed those links. But they're always there on the website. You can take a look at all the people who've signed on. If they agree to have their names listed, their names get listed on the website. As I mentioned, there's over 2,000 now, so it's really, really growing. And joining as a member. So the membership page tells you some more information, but we're going to go into question and answer now. So if you have some questions, I should have pasted this at the beginning, but if you click on this link, and I will paste it also in the chat, we'll go into question and answer. I'm going to stop recording. Stop.